think there are a few themes in what you said I want to touch upon. One is this idea of hierarchy within agents, and the way, and a lot of what we think about today, I think in biology, I think the idea of hierarchy is a lot more apparent, but not always, right? Which is they're agents, but there could be a hierarchy of them, which is just all encompassing and a lot more powerful. Echo chamber being one of them, for example, right? I think one of the things about agent-based modeling, and this is where a lot of the research is going and will continue to go, is it just the individual or group of people can be called an individual, or what constitutes that agent fundamentally can be influenced? The distinction between the environment and the agent can start going away. And that's one of the risks. And you actually learn that by actually doing some of these things. And that's the benefit of this, right? So we knew this, that echo chambers can be created very, very back in the day. I think this is not anything new. People move towards what they prefer is not anything new. I think psychologists have always said that. It's something we hadn't considered. Like when we developed the model top down, I think we never sort of thought about it in a bottom way. What's actually going to happen at the individual level? With all these choices, how will it happen? Right? And we leave it to chance. We leave it to whoever's sort of trying to do something to see what happens. And even then, they haven't quite figured it out. They try experiments and it happens a certain way. So with agent-based modeling, I think one of the things that helps, again, it's not prediction for me, it's about creating the various possibilities. If we understand this possibility, what is it that we can do something about? That's one thing, right? So that's the idea of individual versus the hierarchy and what's more relevant, and maybe even the vanishing of the distinction between environment and individual itself, right? Where the environment becomes the individual in some way, for example. So that's one piece of it, right? And so when I think about what does it mean for us fundamentally and how agent-based modeling can help in, it's trying to bring in this psychological elements, right? As we go about simulating various models and behaviors and things like that, so that we have a much broader understanding of how this all starts working. For the longest time, I think when we think of individuals, we think of different, individuals are different than big companies and corporations and stuff like that. And although it's a collection of that, but the group, the way that thinks, it's very different. Yeah. And that's why mob mentality, mob behavior is very different than individuals, right? And if you think about a lot of recent events, and we have to think of it that way with what's happened, mob and the collection is very different than that. And I think that's where a lot of the future understanding of agent-based modeling will go, where it's power to the individual, and that may not align with individuals who have more of a group mandate, where you think governments, think companies and stuff like that. And it'll almost always be at conflict in many places, and that's where who understand this nature better will get ahead. I think, and right now, I think this power of technology is concentrated in more of the people who can afford it, yep, as opposed to people who are fundamentally at the ground level who can use it. Yep. And that's the disadvantage of technology in some ways. By the time it comes down to the human being, it's gone up so much more that we are catching up. And I think one part of what we've spoken about is how do we actually get to the masses, get to the bottom. I think that's where the benefit of technology comes in. And we have to use that to actually create these models and stuff like that. So there is education involved in terms of the benefits of these things, and if we don't do it, where this can go. There is, how do individuals work with organizations? That becomes a huge thing. Right now, just think about it with the pandemic, the entire culture of how individuals are working with companies, that's changed fundamentally, and companies have had to adapt to it on such massive scale. Imagine 2 years ago if a group of people said, we want to work from home. That wouldn't work. And now companies suddenly realize, wow, that experiment went pretty well, right? So let's do that. So I think it unfortunately needed a massive spike as a pandemic to do that, but we could have learned from a lot of these things. I think we know what happens when a pandemic happens. We knew things would have to be shut down. If we could have simulated that over time, done this for more of a year, 2 years, and if you look at Bill Gates' TED Talks and stuff like that, he's actually said these things could have happened. What's the value in doing this? Who's incentivized to do this? Who's incentivized to look at it? I think that's where, to me, an independent think tank or organization or group has to come in, who's fundamentally looking to try to get at these fundamental truths of nature, as opposed to just something commercial.